Welcome to the 2717 podcast. I'm Javier, an authentic wedding filmmaker.
And I'm Ashley, a passionate wedding photographer.
We're here to bring Proverbs 27:17 to the wedding industry. As iron sharpens iron,
so one person sharpens another. In this fun series, we're all about sharing experiences and building a community.
Expect heartfelt stories, creative inspiration, and some amazing behind-the-scene moments.
Plus, insights from some truly inspiring guests.
Tune in to connect with us, spark your creativity,
and be a part of a supportive community.
You're listening to the 2717 podcast.
Planning your wedding isn't just about choosing a venue, it's about finding the perfect backdrop for one of the most meaningful moments of your life. That's where Juliana Estate comes in. Nestled in the heart of Lakeland, this elegant estate gives you that classic scenic charm, like a movie set, but it's all yours. Think lush greenery, romantic gardens, and plenty of room for unforgettable moments with the people you love the most. It's a place where every detail feels personal because it's not just a venue. It's where your story begins. See how Juliana Estate can make your wedding day truly yours at julianaestate.com. Thanks for sponsoring today's podcast.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Javi.
And I'm Ashley, and you're listening to the 2717 podcast. Today, we have the honor of speaking with Grace, the owner of Grace Torres Photography. Hi, Grace.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
We are so excited to chat with you. Let's dive in and get into how you started with photography and how you got into the wedding industry too.
So I started photography when I was young. I always enjoyed photography. So I definitely started out with just like power shot cameras. If you scroll back on my Facebook, you can see lots of photos of that I took when I was like 10, 11 years old. I got my first DSLR, a Canon Rebel T3 in 2011-ish. So I was like 12 years old, I want to say. And then just started doing portraits. I shot my first couple session around that time with like just friends who were dating to kind of like dip my toes into that, but mainly did like senior portraits, graduation stuff, personal projects. I was really into more like conceptual artistic photography because if we all remember, that's when Instagram was very much on the rise. So I feel like the photographers who got the most attention and following on Instagram were more concept artistic photographers. I barely ever saw wedding photographers, so I almost didn't know it existed. So yeah, shot all throughout like my end years of high school, and then coming into college, I started doing more couples shoots, portraits when I moved down to Florida from Jersey, and then I entered the wedding industry in 2019, so I was like 18, 19 years old, or 19 or 20 years old, I think I want to say, when I started weddings, and yeah, it's just been up from there. I went full-time in 2021, and now I've been full-time for almost 4 years, right? Yeah. I'm trying to do the math in my head because it's like 10 years span of my career.
Yeah, for sure. And you have created such a iconic brand, like especially here in Florida, but like everywhere. I feel like how was it like building such an iconic brand, and how did you niche down in such a saturated market?
Good question. I think when I started, once I decided that I wanted to do weddings, I feel like first of all, it really just kind of like fell into my lap. I wasn't someone who started photography to become a business owner and to make it my career. So none of the beginning stages of my business were very strategic at all. I just was enjoying what I was doing. And then once I decided I wanted to start doing weddings full time is when I niched down very specifically to weddings and started doing a lot on Instagram. I got all of my clients in the beginning through social media, which has really helped my reach, and it's built a lot of brand equity for me because a lot of people here now know who I am. And because I took such high volumes those first few years, a lot of people have had positive experiences with me versus, if I was only doing like 5 or 10 weddings a year, I wouldn't have as many people who could say they had those positive experiences. So lots of social media marketing to just make people aware of who I am and what I do and what my work looks like. And also taking on a lot of work to get a lot of experience just on the field, shooting, making decisions, learning how my equipment works. I still feel like I am always learning new things when I'm shooting. That was like all, I guess, the beginning of my career was just so heavy on experience and social media. And then as I've shifted up into the market that I'm in now, which is a little bit more high end, I've had to overhaul so much of my thinking and overhaul how I market and how my brand speaks to my ideal clients. So I feel like it's a constant evolution. And I'm definitely in a transition phase now, but the foundation of my brand was very much just getting a lot of experience and making sure that people knew that I existed so that they wanted to hire me.
But yeah, exposure leads to expansion. And when you're afforded the opportunity to just be able to be in front of so many people's eyeballs and being able to showcase your work and working with your couples, being very intentional, planting those good seeds is what really allows obviously to flourish. And you're very intentional from the get-go. When was it you decided like, okay, I want to make this a business? And what was the foundational steps, building blocks for you to say, hey, okay, this is step one, this is step two, and now, like you mentioned, you're in a transitional phase. Like, when does this all occur in this plan?
Good question. So it was all super, super gradual because I was like 17 when I started. So I just, you're like, oh, like someone paid me $100 to shoot a Sweet 16 in cash. I'll take it. No contract, no nothing. Like, yeah. So I started out that I was like getting paid and stuff before I had any of these standard procedures in place for contracts and invoicing and all of that stuff. But once I started getting paid in high school and then coming into college, that's when I really started YouTube universitying myself, because I am completely like self-taught when it comes to photo and business. And I was like, okay, I need to get a contract. This is back in like 2018 probably, and start, I made my first price guide on InDesign because I was a graphic design student. And that's when I started thinking more like a business owner and less of just being an artist. And that continued even further, especially when I entered weddings, just because your liability is so much greater. So it was really like when I started getting paid and, realized, okay, I need to have parameters in place to make sure that we're all legally secure here. All
right. So transitioning from being, the business, I would say transitioning from the artist mindset, when you decide, okay, I'm going to foundationally set this as a legal business and start from that point forward. What was the I would say, I guess, the foundational element that you wanted to build your brand off of? Like, okay, these are the key steps that I want to do to take in order to build Grace Torres Photography to where it's at today.
Like practical steps that I took, or like, I guess, foundations of my business in terms of like ethics and stuff?
A little bit of everything.
Okay. Well, I always wanted our business to be built off of transparency with our clients and like solid communication, because I think that's super important. And then especially being in school, I was working in public relations. So I was working in crisis management and also maintaining a brand image. I knew how important it was to set clear and realistic expectations for the people that I was working with and then deliver on those things to maintain that positive brand image. So when I was going about, transitioning my business from the hobby side hustle that most of us start with to being a actual legitimate business, I knew I wanted to have processes for email check-ins and, clear communication about the contract and deadlines for myself and deadlines for when I needed things from my clients. It's always really been about transparency, but also like a heart of service and wanting to serve my couples well and tell their stories in a way that like is true to them and give them that experience that makes them feel truly valued and seen. Because I think on a wedding day, it can be easy for everyone to feel like they're giving attention to these people and like making them happy, but it can be hard to like make people feel truly seen and understood. And we have such a unique role in our service or in our industry as service providers to do that. So like really taking the time to understand what's important to my couple, so that way on the wedding day, I could, I have all of this in place beforehand to make sure I understand you guys and your priorities. And then on the day of, I'm going to deliver and I'm going to remember those little things that you told me. So that way, when you see your gallery, you're like, oh, wow, like we talked about this before, she prepared, and now like she really delivered.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for like creating those processes? Because I know that it's really fun. All the art is really fun. It's really fun to be on a wedding day and it's really fun to get creative, but also like the business aspect of things is so hard. Especially someone who like doesn't have any business background or anything. Like I feel like that's where I struggle the most, is like getting my back end stuff like really solid. But it's like you said, so important, because you need to have your processes set up so that you can get to know the couple as much as possible to then create the best service for them. So
yeah. I think in the beginning, it was a lot of understanding where there were holes in my process or questions I was getting frequently, or things where I'm like, oh, that probably could have gone better on the wedding day. Like, how can I avoid that happening again? If I was ever sending an email more than one time, I was saving it as a template or making it into a template. If I was ever doing planner outreach and there was a helpful email I was sending out to, the planner and the client. I was like, okay, let me build that into my process. So just identifying the weak points of my process and how that was like affecting our flow on the wedding day. That's kind of where I started. And then since then I've done education. I've, done mentorships with other photographers. I'm actually going through a coaching program right now with a photographer. And I'm working with a workflow specialist right now. So now that I'm more established, I can splurge and treat myself to working with professionals who are like so good at this specific part of business that I'm not. But in the beginning, it was very like, DIY, just, I probably should have asked about that before. I'm going to add it into my questionnaire.
Little trial and error vibes.
All of it. Everything is trial and error, especially if you have literally zero business knowledge beforehand. You're just like, okay, hopefully I'm doing this right. So I think that's why having like a coach or something can be helpful.
Speaking to education, what have you seen now in doing mentorships that's a common pain point of a lot of photographers that they struggle with? Is it systems? Is it the art side? Is it the business or back end? Like, can you speak to what would be those main pain points that really stand out?
Yes, almost every time I work with someone, no matter whether they're coming to me for a full-blown coaching program or a one-time mentorship like strategy session, it's always a lack of understanding of who their ideal client is and how they make buying decisions and what they resonate with when it comes to marketing. Almost always. A lot of my coaching clients have literally never done an ideal client profile, and they've also never tried to understand, okay, who are these people? Where do they shop? How do they make buying decisions? What kind of career fields are they in? They just have no idea. So when I go and I ask, hey, why did you make this decision with your branding? Why did you choose this tagline? Oh, just because it sounded good and it sounds like my work. I'm like, okay, but does it actually resonate with your ideal client? Would that person, walk into your store, essentially, which is walking into your website, and say, oh, that is so undeniably what I want out of a photographer. This has to be the person for me. Or would they walk in and say, oh, I just read that on 5 other people's websites. So that's always what it is for me, is just lack of understanding of their ideal client and then translating that into their messaging.
Yeah. Ooh, that is so good.
It is. Honestly, that's a pain point that a lot of people struggle with is that really is identifying who's your avatar, who's your ideal client, who's the one that you want to attract and bring in the front door and stuff. And in such a saturated market, how were you been able to stand out from all the rest of the photographers? And I think you kind of hinted at already with speaking to your ideal client, but what were some intentional steps that you set from the beginning? I want to do this and I'm going to do it this way, and I'm just going to work on executing.
I think everything on the creative side of the business, I've worked really hard on it throughout my career. I'm especially working hard on it now, but I feel like a lot of that is just it should be a given. Okay, you should be a master of your craft. You should be putting out quality work. Your galleries should be polished. Your client communication should be clear. All of those things are givens, and I was delivering that. I was happy with the photos I've been delivering. I'm happy with the way that I communicate with my clients. Now, at this point in my career, and as I've transitioned out of certain markets into other markets, because as you're growing, you're consistently changing those things. It's then comes down to, okay, does my ideal client know that I exist? Where are they going to find me? And then how can I speak to them directly? I feel like a lot of photographers, there are amazing photographers out there, but people just don't know that they exist. So they're lacking business. So for us, our lead volume is extremely high because I work really hard on just being out there, being exposed to our ideal client and just making sure that people know that we exist and we're here and we're doing weddings. And I always say the difference between you and the photographer who you admire, a lot of times it's not even a difference in your quality of work or your quality of customer service. It's just a difference in your marketing, and more people know that they exist, and the way that they communicate with their ideal clients, it just resonates better. They're just doing it better than you are sometimes. So for me, it was all about exposure. It still is. And now I'm getting really into just networking, which is why I'm going to New York City tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'm focusing really heavily on my referrals. But in the beginning, it was very much social media focused. Okay, how do I just make sure people know that I'm here? I'm doing a good job. My clients are happy with me. I'm here.
I love it.
And you're going to New York tomorrow. Tell us about that.
So I'm going to New York to go to the WIPA end of the year. I think it's an end of the year gala. I'm not a member of WIPA, but because they don't have a chapter that's Central Florida, otherwise I would be. But I do so much work on the northeastern coast. I guess I didn't say that half my weddings are here, half my weddings are destination. maybe more like 40, 60 destination, 40 here. But a lot of them are on the northern East Coast. So like I said, networking is becoming increasingly more important for me as my business is progressing. So I need to be in the room with all these people who are in the destination that I want to be shooting at, and producing the types of weddings, the caliber of events that I want to be working. So yeah, I'm not comfortable necessarily going to in-person networking events. And not great at it, but it's like newer for me, but I'm willing to put myself out there for the growth of my business. So I think that also can be what sets you apart, is like, are you willing to do things that are hard or uncomfortable? Or are you just like, I could just stay comfortable and stay in the market that I'm in, but I don't want to.
Right, exactly. And that does like fall into the marketing aspect of things too, is like you said, if no one knows you exist, like you could have amazing work and an amazing client experience, but also like if you're not doing your part and like putting yourself out there and, you know, doing whatever that looks like for your ideal clients, like no one's ever going to find you, you
exactly.
know?
And of course, you know, knowing that you exist, understanding what you offer, and then how to get that, you know what I mean? Like
right.
obviously
there's
nuance, but yeah, I mean, at the, you know, heart of it is just, people have to know that you're there. So
I love it. And then speaking to that, you're in this transitional phase. I'll call it like phase 2, right? Phase 1 is like, okay, I got this. Now you're heading into this different market. What have you now seen that's different based on the goals that you have in terms of heading into this different market and preparing yourself and your brand and, you know, in that vision?
I'm really focused on curating my portfolio a little bit to be a little bit more elevated. So that means doing, you know, some of my own styled shoot stuff, making sure that I have like really beautiful florals and details and stuff on my portfolio. And then also just I got a lot more specific with the weddings that I've accepted for next year. So my 2025 calendar looks vastly different than my 2023 calendar in terms of the scope of the event, the types of planners I'm working with. So really for me, it comes down to portfolio and then also the networking side of things. But if I'm going to be, you know, pitching myself to these planners, I have to have a portfolio that supports that and shows them that I can perform in those environments. So that's my biggest thing, is just like improving my shoot style and curating my portfolio to be next level.
Yeah. What market is that?
I would call it, there's so many different names. So please, nobody come for me in your comments. Okay. But
no, what is your step two?
I would call it like an entry level high end market. I think other people call it like the lovely market. I would say you're looking at anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 events, like to put a number on it. And then I know a lot of people say like, okay, and then luxury is like, I don't know, like just under $1 million, and then ultra luxury is like multi-million. I don't really know all the figures, but I would say, you know, going into the market that I'm in now, averaging hopefully around $10,000 to $12,000 per booking for myself, and then the weddings being at like that $200,000 to like $400,000 ish price point. To me, that's like an entry level high end. Entry level high end vibe. A lot of people would say, if I said, oh, it's like entry level luxury, they'd say, no, it's not. But yeah, there's so much, you know, above that. You know what I mean? So that's the only reason that I made that clarification. But for me, I mean, it's, you know, that's a lot of money. So
it is for one day event or a wedding weekend. So
that's insane.
So
absolutely. What has been the distinction in that market that you've seen in terms of what those, I know you, in a way you're catering to the planner and what they're looking, because that's very niche down, and they seek that planner for their advice and that counsel. So how do you, you kind of mentioned, and you hinted at it, where you work very much like your designs and capture those details, refining your portfolio. But when it comes to the client experience, how does that differ from this market to that in interactions with the couples?
I've worked really closely with my couples like the past 5 years of my career, because I was working with a lot of some full service, some partial, some day of, but like not exclusively day of, or not exclusively full service planning and design like planners. So I had more access to my clients. Moving into a higher end market, you just don't have as much access to your clients. And I feel like I really hinged a lot of my brand upon that personable attribute, you know what I mean? Like being personal with my clients and making them feel like, okay, like I'm going to be close with my photographer and we're going to be friends. That is no longer something that I can use to market myself, because a lot of clients, they don't really care to be my friend. They literally just hired me because they like my work and they trust me to deliver. And I think on some level they like my personality, especially if we get to do a consultation. But that's not the main reason that they hire anymore. It's really all about the caliber of your work. So that's why I'm shifting so much to like really curate my portfolio. So yeah, I would say communication with my clients is so much less than it was before, but it's nice because it's more streamlined because I'm talking to someone who understands what I need as a photographer and how the day is going to flow. So it's a lot more seamless. So I definitely talk to them less. And also I just have like a lot more trust though in turn from my clients. They don't like care to micromanage me. They're used to hiring people that are experts. They, have a financial advisor and they have, all these other people in their life, like to run their lives, because a lot of these people are busy professionals. So they have no problem like handing things over to a professional and saying like, you know best, whatever you think. And I think that's really nice because obviously in the budget market, a lot of your clients are going to have a lot more control. I've said this before on Threads, but I always say budget clients hire you to execute their vision, but higher end clients hire you to execute something that's better than they can imagine because they trust you to do that. So that's something that I've noticed is like a total shift is people have so much more trust in me, which is nice.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, you're like, I like that.
agree too. And then I've noticed that too as well, where I told Ashley, it's like one of the coolest thing is being able to be like a couple just tell you, look, like you have full creative control. I trust in your process. Like this past year, at least for me, I would say it's been definitely, or this last year, I say 2023, 2024 has been very much like we trust in your creative process and you know best. And I had a consult. They were like, you know what? Like, hey, I don't want to be rude or anything. Like, I just trust in what you have to do. Like, I know you know us. I know your work. I believe in your work, which is why we have you. And they just give me little things that I know to have that emotional connection to create for them, at least for video for me. And then they send me out there. And that's the biggest compliment I get because, again, you said when you are trusting in professionals and you're investing into them, it's because you already believe in what they can produce. And when you have that full confidence, then you're able to go ahead and execute on it and do it. And the beautiful thing is when you do have that streamline, especially for a photographer, right? Because at times at certain markets, you would definitely could be a planner at one point, organizing the timeline, setting all that up. But then as you evolve and shift to a different market, you don't have to worry about that as much. And that's something I would say I've been lucky with, because as videographers, it's not a big thing in terms of timeline. I just need to know when the ceremony is, any logistics, speeches, first looks, things like that nature. That makes my job so much easier, just knowing those key points. But I know that in photography, in your world, for sure, it's a lot more a point of contact, asking those questions, being there and be a guiding hand. But when you do have those professional wedding planners that can really guide, execute on all those levels, and you just have to worry about your craft, that makes the experience on your end of creating much enjoyable.
Yeah, and for the clients too.
And sustainable for long term.
No one wants me to be like running around doing stuff that's not my job. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
if you can have someone there that, is focused on management, I'm like, this is great. And Javi knows I'm very organized. I like a nice timeline. So it's,
Love my timeline.
Yeah, that's why I knew, like, I always say you can always shift, like expand, or you can like go upward in price. Like that's how the most common growth you see for photographers. And for me, like I like to have a lot of control, and I like for things to be like really organized and exact. And so I was like, that's why I need to scale up, because I want to have all of that control, like over the work I'm producing, quality control. And also I want to be working with planners who are as type A organized as I am. And like typically the higher end market is where you're going to find that. So
yeah, it just makes your life so much easier when like everyone's on the same page of like, okay, we're serving our couples, and like that's our main focus and the best way we can. So
yes.
Question. I'm gonna put you in, this is gonna hot take moment, right?
Oh, I love hot takes.
Here we go.
What do you say, right? As moving up in the market and catering to those higher planner weddings, how would you say, would there be any conflict of interest when, for example, as let's say this planner is very big in design, but let's say if you have the opportunity, I guess, to interact with these couples based on their budget, they speak with you and they say, hey, we want to focus on this or the other. Like, do you find there being a conflict of interest when your couple is your client, but also in a way that planner is as well? Because long term, they can sustain you, but the couple is for once. But how would you approach that situation when it comes to that aspect?
Yeah, right now, like all my couples are still the people who are signing the contract. So they are my main priority. And I still like obviously want to give a great experience to the planner, because at the end of the day, they're essentially hiring you onto their team and you want them to come back to you. I actually just had this with a planner who was like, hey, do you have time to grab some behind the scenes for us while we're setting up the reception? And I was like, hey, they don't have a first look, so it's going to be tight. I was like, I can send people over to the reception to get detail photos, but at the end of the day, like we have to get detail photos and couples portraits first. And like, that's priority. And obviously the planner is like super understanding. So like I'll make the effort to impress them and, you know, give them a great service as well. But at the end of the day, obviously, like whatever my client wants, the goal is to get both done. And if we can plan to get both done through those transparent conversations, me and the planner in pre-production, that's always the goal. But like on the day of, for, you know, decision making, right now, I still am always like an advocate for my couples.
Absolutely. And honestly, the biggest thing too as well is at the end of the day, the planner has the most contact with that couple. And if they're really online, they should obviously end up being the biggest advocate for the couple as well.
Most of the time they're like, oh yeah, they don't, you know, care too much about that. Or we can probably not spend a lot of time on that because of XYZ. Or, oh, they actually really are excited for these portraits, so let's block out extra time. So like most of the time they're relaying that to me as well.
Yeah. And I think it's all about word choice too. It's how you like go to each other. If the planner's like, hey, I need you to grab this. And then, you know, you come back at them with grace and you're like, hey, I can't, like my couple really wants me to do this. Like I'm going to try my best to like get exactly what you want, but my couple really wants me to focus on this. So I'm going to do that. Or like you said, where you're like, hey, I don't have time, but I can try and send somebody over. Like just handling those moments with grace and compassion and still being like, I still want to try and serve you. That's going to show like your strengths too, you know what I mean? And like your passion for what you do. Like it's like, hey, I really value our relationship, but I also really value our relationship with like our clients. So
totally, to balance.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
With that being said, what has been your like sweet spot in terms of number like of hours of coverage that you feel like makes a wedding day seamless and not stressful and it flows just very well?
Still 8 to 10 for me, because most of the time, a lot of these couples, like they also they don't always have a grand exit, so they don't really need me there at the end of the night, you know? So everything on site, you know, relatively normal guest count, 8 hours can be totally fine. But I usually say like 8 to 10 is where I like to be. I like to have buffer room. I like for us all to be relaxed. So yes. I definitely build that into the timeline. So yeah, 8 to 10-ish. I mean, I've done longer, like I've done literally like 14 hours, but I wouldn't say that's like my favorite.
Yeah. Another question, what are your main focuses going back into like editing and like building that portfolio? What are your main focuses with creating like a stellar portfolio, a stellar gallery for your couples, and just keeping that like consistency throughout it?
I've become a lot more selective. Christian knows because he helps me cull, and a lot of times I'm like, we're taking that one out, we're throwing this one out. Yeah. They're not even looking at the camera for this one, take it out. Whereas I used to be more lax and just like, oh, let's give them all the best. That might not be the best photo, but it's a good one, so let's throw it in. Now I'm like, okay, we're putting in the best photos, like we're putting forth our best, and then in the post-processing, I do a lot more retouching and a lot more object removal. You'll never see tripods or exit signs in my photos anymore, like things that I did not edit out before, because also I was shooting like 50 weddings a year. I have the capacity to really take the time and make sure my galleries are extremely polished, especially now working with planners. It's a huge eyesore for them to see those things, and I don't want them to see that in my portfolio. So now I'm taking the time to like really make sure that I'm catching everything, wall outlets, trash, like everything's getting edited out these days.
So get it out of here, AI. Yeah. Thank you.
And also that helps, because like I didn't have that before. So like it would have taken me so long to edit some of this stuff out. And now like it's a lot easier for me to do, 700 photos and edit out whatever needs to get edited out.
Right.
And it would have been like 3 years ago.
What would you say is the metric standard that you look at to say, okay, this is a quality photo, this is not, when it comes to the culling process?
Definitely how flattering everybody looks. And I also feel like, like male gaze and female gaze, I feel like I approach things from like the female gaze a lot. So definitely, yeah, making sure everyone looks flattering, composition and lighting. Otherwise I throw it in black and white. And the only time I do that is if it's a photo with like feeling or an important person, you know,
Yes.
where it's like, and I will say that to my clients on the phone, like, hey, I'm pretty selective, but also sometimes there will be photos that end up in your gallery that I think are really important to you because it's an important person or a sentimental moment. Maybe I didn't have time to like turn the lights on or bring you guys outside, but I'm probably still going to include that in your gallery here and there. So I kind of let them know beforehand what they can expect. But for the majority of like my detail shots, my portraits, you know, the standout shots in my gallery, I want them to be really well composed and like very clean and polished.
How does it come then? It sounds like it's very selective in terms of the final product they get in the gallery. Now, would you say, do you have terms in your contracts or things that gives you that full creative control? What's the final layout is going to be in terms of the deliverables?
I do have it in my contract, of course. And then I barely get pushback. The only time I ever get, not pushback, but I ever get like a message after a wedding is if you know, there was a family photo that wasn't there or something like that, which like honestly almost never happens. Or, you know, I mean, this is why I throw most of my black and whites in color, because I used to get that a lot. Hey, can I have this black and white photo in color? So most of the time, if I can do it in color, I'll do the copy. But honestly, like it's really rare for me to have a couple come back after their gallery with anything but just like positive feedback. So yeah, I feel like maybe that's because I set a really clear expectation beforehand. I don't really know. Also, I think a lot of my couples are pretty like chill, but
Yeah.
so I think that helps. But yeah,
Yeah, they're like, we just got a ton of photos that we love. We're good. We're chilling. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. How many images are in your galleries?
I'm cutting it down, guys. I'm cutting it down. Okay. It used to be anywhere from like 700 to like 1,200 for a full wedding weekend, you know, and this is for like at least like 2 days of events. I'm trying to get it to be down more like 600 to like 800 so that I'm being really, really selective.
You're right.
But it's definitely like a learning curve for me to be like okay with throwing out some photos. So I've gotten more selective in post-processing, but I think I still have like a little bit to go with like my comfortability level of like not including as much as I used to, because it is different for me. So
yeah.
How has it changed your shooting style in terms of an actual wedding day to be very intentional in getting those, you know, perfect moments and sense of to get that final end result?
I almost feel like I shoot more actually. And I think part of that is because I'm like leaning into the documentary side of my style. I think a lot of people see my work and think it's very like editorial and like vibey, but I actually think my work is a little bit more like fine art traditional, especially if you look through one of my full galleries. It's a lot more traditional than like, you know, some of the other photographers that are a little more like fun and vibey and like cool anti-bride vibes. So yeah. I actually feel like I shoot more, literally just because I'm trying to lean into not being so traditional and like being better at getting some more of that, the documentary feel of just snapping away while people are interacting. I haven't always been the best at that in my career. So I'm like leaning into that, and I'm having Christian lean into that too as my second shooter. So yeah, you would think I would say I'm shooting less, but I'm actually shooting more. I'm just being really selective afterwards.
Yeah. I know. I feel like I need like 5 million people to cull through my images. I'm always like, that one's good, and that one, that one, that one, that one. And then I have like 50 million red tabs, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we go through a couple times now. Like we used to just do
smart.
one, and then, you know, I would edit through and pull stuff, but now I'm like getting a lot better about going through it like 2 or 3 times and really making sure I'm like, okay, I love everything in this gallery. Like I'm really happy. I'm really proud of it all. So yeah.
What's usually your deliverable times when it comes to their sneak peeks, if any, and then their final gallery?
So previews I do 24 hours, and I feel like the more you move up in price, the more it's expected, especially from planners, which I didn't really know, I guess, until I started like researching. So yeah, now 24 hours for previews, and I send to planner and couple, and then final gallery delivery is 6 to 9 weeks, but I typically deliver closer to like 5 to 7, I would say. I'm almost always early. I'm almost never on my deadline. So
that's awesome.
I just give myself extra room.
Yeah. What's your like terms of a maximum terms of weddings to be able to keep up with the quality that you want to control? What would you say is the sweet spot number of weddings per year?
So next year I have 24 of my own, and then 2 associates are shooting for me. I don't do a ton of associate weddings. I still keep it here and there, like if it's a couple that I really wish I could take and I can't, and I think the associate will really vibe with them, but I'm really trying to make it more just like me shooting the weddings. I like to be at all my weddings personally. So 25 for next year is like the goal for me, which I'm almost there. I guess I could stop here, but like we all know me, guys. So yeah, I have 26 total, 24 of my own. So I'll take one more. And then the year after that, maybe 25 again. I just like by the time I have kids, I want to do like 12 a year. So that's kind of the goal for future Grace.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I agree. It's definitely scaling down, refining the process, and man, your deliverable timing is insane. I know for myself, for creating trailers and films, it takes a good amount of time to go through the clips. But it's funny, I do take the same approach in terms of like, hey, shoot more. More is better because it gives me more options in terms of creating films, because then you have the opportunity to change the pacing of the film. Now if you want to go at a faster pace, or you want to speed it up or slow it down, you're able to, because of that approach. The more it's better in that aspect, but being very intentional with each single shot. That way it could be a home run for the most part. How has, in terms of taking that mindset approach and shooting more, and I know you hinted at the documentary side of things, what's one of the, I would say, you're approaching when it comes to then posing and then working with other creatives to achieve a like-minded result?
Yeah, I'm working with the same videographers, obviously nice. Like 10 of my weddings a year usually are with Christian. So that helps because we're both very client experience oriented. So I guess a practical example of that is like if they're getting ready and we do a shot once and I know it would look cool from like 3 other angles, but like they don't really care to have a million angles, I'm not going to ask them, and Christian's not going to ask them either. So we're on the same page about like, okay, let's let her enjoy it. We got one really solid shot from this angle. Could we get it through the window and then from outside of the door frame as well? Yeah, but like I'm not going to make her do it again. Versus working with other creatives, that is their approach, and I just adapt, and I feel like I'm pretty chill. I mean, Javi's worked with me. I feel like I'm pretty chill about adapting. But I try to keep in mind what videographers need. So like including movement, especially like making sure that I remember that they're shooting horizontally and I'm shooting vertically. So like not having a bunch of other stuff in the frame, on that horizontal like framing. And just like, yeah, making sure it's not too stiff, because I think a lot of like editorial posing is seen as really, really stiff and like, you're just standing there. So thinking about ways that I can then incorporate movement of like, oh, okay, now like run your hand down this way or whatever. So that way the videographer can use it and they're not like having to jump in and be like, okay, and then do it this way. It's a little bit more cohesive. I also do touch base with them beforehand to make sure that they know that I'm there to make sure that they get what they want and just like build a level of rapport prior.
Yeah, that's huge.
Speaking to that, then it's a 2-part question. Part 1 is, what are things that you've learned as a photographer working with a videographer that's like, okay, this added perspective? And then vice versa, what are things that you provide a perspective to a videographer that's helped them as well when shooting with a photographer?
I can only really speak to working with like you, Christian, and then maybe some of the other people I work with really consistently, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But helping with some of the video stuff for Christian has just opened my eyes to the setup and teardown times.
Yeah.
So I am a lot more mindful about creating time for that. In my timelines, if I know they have a video team, and like knowing how many people are coming, hey, do you have an assistant, or is it just you guys, or just you as one person or whatever? That way I kind of know, okay, we're going to have to put lights up and put tripods up and then take them down. And then, we're moving from one place to another. Okay, let me tell the planner that we need to have time to place the mics and take the mics off or whatever. Things I just never thought about. And even when I worked with you, Javi, like I never thought about it because like you didn't like make it my issue, you know what I mean? You just did it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now that I work with Christian and I like want to help him, or I like am a little bit more in tune with what he's doing just naturally, I'm a lot more aware of it than I used to be. And then in terms of, I guess, what other videographers can take away, I think maybe it's just like, I feel like everybody just takes away new like posing and composition ideas, like it's like, oh, I haven't tried that pose. Like that was cool or whatever.
Yeah.
And hopefully like also communication and stuff like that. I feel like I'm pretty good about communicating well with the couple and the planner, but mostly I feel like we're all just like getting ideas from everybody else's poses and stuff.
Yeah. And working with Javi, I can relate to. I've assisted him a couple times, and just like the teardown, even after the wedding, I'm like, I'm tired, bro.
Yes.
You want me to take down all these lights and these tripods? I was like, I'm out. I was like, I gotta go. The sparkler exit happened. We're gone. And he's like, yeah, just kidding. We have to take down everything. And I go, oh no.
Yeah.
It's so tragic. Which is something that you like never have to think about when you're just doing photo, and everything that you need is on your body. Where the videographers have so much more gear.
Yes.
Props.
It really is. Like, I love what I'm doing now with anamorphics, but it's just a lot more work into it. But it's the challenge that keeps me creatively like in tune and creating these films now. I was like, all right, this feels much more like me, and if I feel like I can sustain this long term. What have you thought about in terms of creating process that you can see? Like, what is your goal? Is your goal to be able to build your business is doing this long term for the next 10 years from now, or is it gonna shift in the future? Like, what's your mindset right now?
I think right now I'm like looking towards the future of like having a family. So my mindset is more around how can I create a business that supports my journey as like a mom one day. So how can I, support my family financially, but also have a lot of time, like quality time with my family. So I love weddings. I don't see myself leaving the wedding industry anytime soon. And I think like if you take care of your body and stuff, and also if you're not overworking yourself, like if I'm only doing 12 to 15 weddings a year, it can be really sustainable in the long term. So I'd love to keep doing weddings. Like, I'm only 25. Like I could do it for another 10 years and still only be 35. So I definitely love to continue doing weddings for a long time and just scaling my business up in terms of like the quality of work that I'm producing and the types of events that I'm working. And then who knows, maybe I'll like business consult one day or do something else. But for now, I don't know. I love weddings. So I feel really happy with my career. I'm very, very happy in the wedding industry.
That's awesome. When it comes to setting goals or setting like the plan for the year, what's your approach when it comes to setting these goals? And like, all right, is it a 5-year plan, 3-year, 2-year, 1 year? Like, do you just, set the overall vision and breaking down by steps?
Right now, actually, I'm not like the best goal setter. Javi loves setting goals. Every time I see Javi, he says, "Oh,
I know." I was like, that was such a Javi question.
What's your 5-year plan? I'm like, I am literally just trying to get through the rest of the wedding, man.
And I'm just trying to get through the next 5 hours. So
yeah, I feel like I'm not like super like revenue driven necessarily. I'm more, okay, am I producing the best work that I can produce? And am I like connected to the types of people I want to be connected to? Am I shooting the types of events that I want to be shooting? So if it's like, okay, I want to work at this specific venue or get into this specific market, like that's kind of a win for me. So for example, last year I wanted to get into the Miami market, and then this year I have 3 weddings in Miami. So like that to me, I'm like, okay, I hit my goal. Like I'm entering the market. I've clearly like marketed myself appropriately to like get work there. And then for next year, I'm really just trying to get connected with more planners. So I have things that I do to like nurture those goals, but I'm not like a 5-year plan person where I'm like, okay, in 5 years, I'm going to have kids and I'm going to like shoot this many weddings a year and I'm going to make this much money. I'm not really like that type of like planner. I'm kind of more of just like okay, like I want to be doing the best that I can. And I want to be like, I do want to be at the top of our industry. And like, I want to be at the top of my field at some point. But I can only really focus on like where I am right now. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite part of your business? Do you like the more like photography creative side? Do you like the business side? And you do mentorships too. Do you like that side of things? What's your favorite thing right now, or anything that's like getting you really excited for business or anything?
I actually really do like the business side of things. I know we just said I'm not like a goal setter / planner, but I enjoy the business side. I feel like I'm like an even split of like left and right brained. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I obviously love photography and like I love my clients, but I just find business, marketing, understanding my numbers, I find it super fascinating. So, I mean, at the end of the day, my favorite part is definitely spending time with my clients and like getting those messages after the wedding that they had a really wonderful experience and that they love their photos and, that they're going to cherish them forever. That is like 100% like my favorite part and the most fulfilling part. But I think the most interesting part to me, because it's always shifting and changing, is the back end of the business and the marketing side of things.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I love that. Question. Do you have any wedding hot takes that you want to chat about that we should discuss? Anything that you're like controversial opinions or anything?
I think everything's controversial because like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Everyone has different opinions. Like the whole, like blurry photos or no blurry photos, or doing like the Dutch tilt or not. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Just do whatever you want. But
I love a good tilt.
yeah,
I will say.
I do too, but like not for all my photos, but
yeah.
if you do, that's fine. I guess maybe that's my hot take, but no, I think everyone should do whatever they want. But I mean, no, everybody talks about how like, especially because we were talking about higher end weddings, how like, don't say luxury because like, the people who are in the luxury market don't ever say that about themselves. And I think that's like mostly true. I mean, I've definitely seen some people that are in the higher end wedding space that say luxury destination wedding photographer or luxury destination wedding videographer. For example, Emma K Films. she books very expensive
Yeah.
weddings.
Yeah.
And she says it on her website. But they're most of the people that I kind of keep an eye on that like I really enjoy seeing their work and they're in that higher end space. They just say, this is my name and you know me by my name. So
Yeah.
maybe that's my hot take is don't say it, just show it.
I agree.
Ooh, that's
honestly.
really good
That's
one.
funny. Well, I removed for myself like anything that describes me other than just wedding filmmaker because I'm tired of being put in a box.
Yeah.
Because I like to adapt to the couple ways. If they're spontaneous, fun, and adventurous, I'm gonna create that type of film. If they're more intimate or they care about design, I'm gonna focus on that. It's like why be put in a box? Like
Yeah.
let your name or what you produce speak for itself.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my business coach about that because I was telling her I feel like there's almost like dissonance, I guess, within my business sometimes because I think a lot of people see some of my work online as like more edgy and fun. And then when you look at my galleries, there's actually a lot of photos that are more traditional. So I was like, how do I describe my style then? Like, I want people to resonate with it, but I also want to be really clear about what I do. And she was like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it just means that you're like really flexible. And I was like, thank you for that perspective.
You're like,
I
all
needed
right,
that.
thanks.
I was like, okay, cool. My quarter life crisis is over.
Do you have anybody who's really inspiring you right now? Any photographers that you're like really looking up to and you're like, you're inspiring me?
I love seeing Kaylee Taylor's work for documentary stuff.
Oh, me too. I've been
She's-
raving about her to Javi recently. I'm
She's
like,
been
have you
at the top
seen
of my
this?
mind because I was just talking to her today. I'm going to actually work with her in the spring, which I'm really excited about.
Oh, that's
I love
awesome.
seeing other people work. So I love seeing her stuff for like film, documentary stuff. I love Josie's work for that more like cool girl bride. She's very editorial. I also love following Kristen Marie Parker. I keep up with Norman and Blake. I keep up with Abby Jew's team. Who else? I have a whole saved folder of I'm like, okay, I'm going to go look for inspo or see what everyone's up to of
Yeah.
all the photographers that I like to follow. My business coach, her name is Sarah Bradshaw. I love seeing her stuff. She's a little bit more like fine art, I feel like, more like traditional. And I really like seeing her stuff too for beautiful compositions and stuff.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome. I got another hot take.
Yeah,
Go for it.
What do you prefer, or what do you think is more valuable to the couple, photo or video for rehearsal dinner?
Bruh, he keeps bringing this one up.
I think to the couple, they think it's photo, but I think if they're doing speeches, they should have video there because it rounds out a video so much more than it rounds out a photo gallery. I mean, obviously,
For
I
sure.
would prefer for them to have both because I do think that it can make your gallery feel so much more full and it can give it a lot more context. But at the end of the day, like you're not necessarily lacking as much as a wedding day that has really limited speeches and like really limited audio. If you can pull some of that from the rehearsal dinner, you have so much more. And that's something I would have never said before I started being a part of the editing process with our videos. But yeah. And I also like struggle with that because a lot of people want me for the rehearsal and like not Christian. And I'm like, but you want us both. Like
It's quite funny
people
too.
do.
I've asked it to planners. Even I have one couple too as well. They're like, rehearsal dinner, it makes much more sense because of the same thing, the toast. That's the part where it's like, it's going to do it just as better because rehearsal dinner is really like a reception pretty much. And when it comes to reception, that's really more on the video side of capturing, okay, the speeches, the toes, and then find those characters to be able to support it in the film. And so when it comes to it, like for rehearsal dinner, I've seen a good amount do photography, but then even the photographers, the planners is like, doesn't do the day justice, that moment justice.
Yeah.
And so, that's a trend now. That's three for three.
I know.
That's
okay. I
that's
agree.
my hot take. That's the only one I got. I won't say that for a wedding day because I already know I'll be gone.
Yeah, when we first brought it up, we were
I
fighting.
just become a
was like,
photographer again.
put them up, bro. No, I totally agree. I think it's so important, especially to get the storytelling aspect of things. It's
You heard it here first.
Okay.
Overrated or underrated?
okay.
Like, is blurry photos like overrated or underrated?
I think in the photographer
Yes.
community,
Only for
they're overrated. I think for clients, they're underrated because they don't understand why we're doing that.
Is zoom lenses overrated or underrated?
I think zoom lenses are overrated, to be honest. I have tendonitis from my zoom lens, not gonna lie.
my wrist be hurting.
28
Yeah.
to 70.
I think I'm like gonna develop carpal tunnel, bro. So I've been using primes a lot more lately, and I like them. They're great.
What's your favorite prime?
My 50 probably.
50.
Yeah,
Favorite camera body?
my R5.
Ooh.
But I also tried out the R5 Mark II, and it's pretty cool.
Are you jumping on it?
Probably not, because like my R5 isn't that old, and I'm not like a gear nerd where I'm always switching out my stuff. I kind of like to get a high cost per use. But if Canon was like, hey, do you want to keep it? I would have said yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
I would love that. Canon, if you're listening,
Yeah.
send Grace a R5 Mark II, please.
Ooh, what's your setup for ceremonies?
Ooh.
Typically, my 28 to 70 and my 70 to 200, or like my 50 and my 70 to 200, depending on how much space I have. Either way, between me and my second shooter, we're typically on either a wide or a 35 or a 28 to 70, 70 to 200, and then either a 50 or an 85, depending on space. If we're outside, we can do the 85 and the 50 and stuff like that. If we're inside, then like I definitely need a wider lens. But I'm not an aisle sitter, so like I'm always on my 70 to 200 during a ceremony. I do not stand in the aisle. I hate standing in the aisle. So I have to have a tight lens.
Is film photography overrated or underrated?
I think it's underrated, but I love film, so I'm super biased.
I think for video, I would say Super 8 is overrated in my opinion.
I totally agree with that, actually.
Ooh.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm kind of more on the VHS train.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's accurate one to our era. Into
It's relatable.
in terms of like
Yeah.
you have control over it. I don't have to
Yes.
send it to anybody.
Yeah.
That's my biggest pain point with it.
I just don't like the lack of control in the post-processing, because like at least for me, I can drop my film off at the lab. But for Super 8, we'd have to mail it in, and like I just don't like the idea of it not ever coming back. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
What if
Yeah.
something happened to it? So
Same
Yeah,
vibe.
for sure.
That's why I've only
Yeah.
done it once on my own, and I said never again.
yeah, with me.
Yeah. I say, you know what? Like,
With
I'm
me and
not doing
Cody.
that again. I'm good. I'd rather have a VHS camera.
Yeah.
And so
Always have control of it.
Yeah.
it's true though. It's having control of something that is precious in that moment for that couple. I mean, they invested
Yeah.
into it, and it's not something that's cheap. And so if you have more control over it, it'll be nice. There is a Super 8 camera though that also like would transcode it and then like save it to a memory card while it's filming.
That's
Really?
crazy.
Yes, but
I
it's
didn't think
$5,000.
Oh, is that the Kodak one? I didn't think that
it's a B&H. Like they made it, or I think it might be the Kodak one. But it's like that's a very niche type of camera.
Yeah, it's like if you're a luxury wedding videographer, and you're known for Super 8, sure, go spend $5,000. But like for us, not gonna happen.
Same
Yeah.
here. Same here.
Yeah, for sure. But I love film photography. It's so much
I
fun.
do
Yeah.
agree with film photography.
Yeah, it's
I
just
love film.
definitely a different look to a gallery and a different, nostalgic era.
Yeah, I love
Vibes.
it.
Do you have a like favorite film camera or one that you desire?
Ooh, honestly, I don't have one that I desire because I try not to look.
So I can't look at it.
I haven't really looked around, but I love my Contax G2, but I prefer my 1V for the control that I have over the image. The G2 is almost more like point and shoot-ish style, like not totally, but it's kind of point and shoot-ish. And the 1V is like basically like holding a 5D. So I feel like you have a lot more control. So, and I like my film to be very clean and crisp, so I like to have control.
I love it. And then this one's an interesting one. What would you say is your greatest gifting that you have that's to you that you felt like this gifting has allowed me to be able to propel myself in my career and to be able to be where it's at today?
I think being an empath has helped me because I'm always able to take my own feelings out of the situation, whether it's in the moment or it's like an hour later or it's after I let this sit overnight. Like obviously it's not always immediate, but I'm always able to take myself out of it and like try to understand how that person is feeling or why they might be frustrated or upset, and cater my response in a really rational manner, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's important to be empathetic on a wedding day because you're dealing with so many dynamics and people that are different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like even in business, if you are dealing with a difficult client or someone who's upset, like I'm able to be like, hey, you know what? I understand why you're frustrated. This is what I can do for you, instead of just being like, nope, this is what it is and that's it. Yeah, just like responding from a place of like always wanting to give the best service because like I truly do care for them and like want them to have a good experience.
How has faith played a role in your business?
I think honestly, like I felt really guilty about charging people money and stuff when I first started, because I was like, oh, like I just feel like I just felt like it was wrong almost, and I think a lot of that did stem from like my faith. But now I think I see it as more of like I have a gift that I can serve people with, and no matter where you're at in the marketplace, there is desire and need for that. And whether you're outwardly telling people that you're a Christian or not, having like that heart of service and giving them a great experience and them feeling like you cared for them and, you know, wanted them to have a great experience, not just on their wedding day as clients, but also as people, you're still sharing Christ's love with those people, even if you're not talking about it, right. Especially because so many of our clients, they probably don't agree with our beliefs, and maybe that would completely turn them off from like working with us or like wanting to be associated with us or like be friends with us. But then when they meet us, we're very warm and welcoming, and there are things we can relate on, and you know what I mean? It feels like we're friends. Yeah, it's just like showing people like what I think like true Christianity should be, which is like very accepting and loving. And yeah.
Cool. Do you have a favorite Bible verse?
Good question. I always like come back to Jeremiah. What is it? 9/11 or something?
29/11.
Yeah. I promise I went to Christian college. I just don't remember anything. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, like I know the Lord is guiding our steps, and when it comes to business, like I always do fall back on that. That it's at the end of the day, like I do everything for the glory of the Lord. It's not like for us, for our lives here, our money, like our possessions, you know, it's to further his kingdom and to help people to feel like the love and the understanding and the grace that if Jesus were here, he would provide for them as well. So that's the goal. Is like everyone walks away with just like, okay, that was so great. And like, she made me feel really like cared for and accepted. So
yeah, something about it felt different.
Yeah, exactly. Like I always hope that people feel that way, even if I'm not saying it,
right.
Or maybe sometimes every now and then I'll just be like, oh yeah, like we go to church or whatever, like, and they'll kind of like know, but yeah, even if you're not saying it, you can still, you know, be like a good example or like a good influence on someone.
Yeah. Do you have any like crazy wedding stories or like anything, like it could be good or bad, anything that sticks out in your brain that you were like, this was a moment that I'll never forget?
Yeah, I do. The only one I'll talk about is one that doesn't involve like anyone at a wedding or anything, because like I'm not gonna do that. But I did do a TikTok about this one time I went to a venue and I was doing like an elopement, and essentially like the people that did our permit, which was very expensive because we paid to be in like a certain part of the property that was like super nice, and we paid for like a sunset spot, so like everything was just more expensive. Like for a 2-hour elopement permit, it was like $2,500, so it was like a good amount of money that they paid to be there. But for some reason, even though we went back and forth with the venue on the date, they never like recorded our permit properly, so they didn't have the correct staffing. So we were in one of the areas and like a security guard came up and like started yelling at me. And I was like 20. I was like, he was like yelling at me and my clients, and I showed him our permit and he was like, you're a liar. Like,
what?
I was absolutely shook. So that was one of the craziest things that's happened to me. Other than that, yeah, prob's not going to talk about it publicly, but
yeah. Any like good standout moments that like you were like, this really shaped me as a photographer or just a human?
I think in general, doing weddings with families who have experienced loss has opened my eyes a lot to what people's grief can look like throughout, like over the course of a year because I'm with them, but then also over the course of a celebration, and how those two emotions and like feelings can coexist, like the deep joy of the best day of your life, but then also the deep grief of like missing someone. And for me, learning how to like walk with people through that grief, even from a further distance, but like how I can support my clients through that, even though it's something that I haven't experienced, and just like making sure that we like leave space for them to feel, you know, feel all the feelings. It's made me like more grateful, definitely, for like the wedding that I had and like having my family there and healthy. And it's just helped me to like understand how people process grief and like, you know, what it's like for them. I guess it's helped me to be a little bit more like empathetic and understanding.
Yeah, grief and loss is so hard, especially on a wedding day when all you want to do is celebrate, but you just want everybody there, and you can't have that, and it's so hard. For sure. And like walking through that with them, because you do see them at like the most vulnerable points of the day. Mm-hmm. I mean, not that it's the whole thing is, but like you see them at every moment of the day, and like when they're breaking down about someone not being here, like in the getting ready suite or like whatever that looks like, and like having to be there with them, you know what I mean, and walk them through that must be hard.
Yeah, really definitely makes you like appreciate your health and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Instagram threads, is it underrated or overrated?
Okay, I've never done it. I haven't downloaded it. I feel very millennial of me, even though I'm very Gen Z. I don't know. I haven't done it yet.
You should.
Yeah,
get on threads.
Okay.
Yeah. It's funny because I don't get in a way, because I know it's like similar to X or formerly Twitter, and I never had Twitter. And then I downloaded Threads. I have Threads, and I just look at the comments or read it, but I'm like, I just still don't get it. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a me thing, and when it comes to social media, but I feel like I don't get it. But this is opportunity. I can get it. So share to us.
Yes, yeah. Give us all the tea.
The whole thing about Threads and
Yeah.
like the way you use it, the way you
I'm not like an avid Threads user. I'm a lurker.
You said I'm
not
just spying.
I'm not a big poster because I don't really have like much
you post more than I do.
to
That's
share.
for sure,
I feel
though.
like, but I'm really good about responding to other people. So like
Okay.
I'll connect with them, and then it's like, oh, like that person from Threads who's a photographer in this location just followed me on Instagram. Oh, I just got a referral from them. Like you just never know. Same thing with planners. I'll interact with some planners on there. It's just, I think it's more of like I think of Threads like talking shop. It's very business oriented. It's not like fun. It's very like, oh, if I want to talk about work, I'm gonna go read Threads.
Right.
But I think it's good for connecting with people because it's more conversational than an Instagram comment, because you're opening up a conversation about a specific topic and you're leaving someone else space to then respond to your opinion. So it's more back and forth than just like beautiful tablescape, it's a little bit more
Heart eyes
conversational.
emoji.
Yeah, it's better. It's more, I guess it's less forward than like being in someone's DMs, you know what I mean? Because it's like a public forum. But it's more impactful than just commenting on their Instagram, like, oh, this looks so nice.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You can actually like create a genuine conversation with people that you probably wouldn't ever meet because, you're in either different states or even like different industries too. Like,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah, lots of different people from different industries. And you have really good organic reach. It's like TikTok, how your feed is not just the people you follow. So I think that's kind of cool too.
Yeah.
You never know who's going to see your stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any tips for any photographers like wanting to get into the wedding market, or like beginning photographers, where they should start, anything
Yeah.
like that?
I mean, in the very beginning, I'm sure this is the advice you guys would both give as well, but like literally just try everything. So that way you know what you like. And then if you decide that you want to pursue a specific avenue, then pursue that avenue. It doesn't mean you have to say no to other things, especially like so you can reinvest the money you make. Doesn't mean you have to say no to like a maternity shoot or a family shoot unless you really don't want to do it, but just market, what you want to do more of. And then also don't be afraid to reach out to other photographers and ask them to come shadow, or like to hold their bags, or something that's going to serve them, and be helpful to them.
Yeah. And then do you have like a number one tip for anybody? Like number one learning thing, experience, anything?
I think if you are a creative, the more you can do to shift yourself into a business owner mindset, the better you will do. Instead of just focusing on your craft, you have to learn the business side. So more you can start thinking like a business owner and like thinking like a pro marketer. I think the more success that you'll probably have in terms of like lead volume.
Period.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We enjoyed having you here and sharing all of your knowledge, your expertise, your experiences. Thank you for coming on to the 2717 podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. It was so fun, and hopefully, in the future I'll come back, or maybe one day, one day I'll podcast.
Yes,
not.
please.
Probably not.
Grace, where can they find you?
Everywhere at Grace Torres Photo.
And Javi, where can they find you?
At sundial.creatives and at sundialcreatives.com.
And you can find me at Ashley Jade Photography LLC on Instagram and TikTok, and through my website. And you can find us at the 2717 podcast on Instagram and TikTok, 27 the number 17 spelled out. And then you can also listen on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I don't know where you listen, but we're just so happy you're here. So tune in to us next week, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Peace.
Bye.